DreamWorks just can't stop taking shots at Disney, and they do it yet again with their latest animated release, RGB Gillman Teenage Kraken. So, let's talk about it. What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here. I just got back from watching RGB Gillman Teenage Kraken, and as I do with all my reviews, I'm going to share a little bit of information about the movie, then go over the pros and cons, and finally, let you know if this is something you should be checking out in theaters. If that kind of thing sounds cool to you, and you want to keep up to speed on all the latest releases in theaters and at home, make sure you subscribe. In RGB Gillman Teenage Kraken, a shy adolescent learns that she comes from a fabled royal family of legendary sea krakens, and that her destiny lies in the depths of the oceans, which is bigger than she could ever imagine. As I mentioned before, this movie comes from Dreamworks Animation, which is the same studio that brought you franchises like Shrek, as well as How to Train Your Dragon, and of course, the most recent Shrek spin-off, Puss in Boots: Last Wish, which was fantastic. And with all that considered, Dreamworks is really what I would say is a hit and miss studio. They have these fantastic franchises that are beloved to this day, but then they also come out with a number of movies that are not good at all. They also have a history of directly attacking Disney in some really funny ways, whether it's going all the way back to their first movie, Ants, which they only started making because they knew Disney was making A Bug's Life, and they put Ants out the month before A Bug's Life was released. And then, of course, going all the way to present day with this movie, RGB Gillman Teenage Kraken, which I can totally see the elevator pitch for. What if we just remake Disney's Turning Red and blend in a little bit of The Little Mermaid, but flipped on its head? I'm telling you, there's no shame in their game at all. This movie is directed by Kirk, DeMicco, whose only other real directorial credits in this realm are with The Croods, as well as Vivo, which are pretty decent movies. It stars Lana Condor as RGB Gillman. You have Toni Collette, who of course has one of the greatest first names in the history of the world, I think. Pretty sure we can all agree on that, right? There's also Annie Murphy, Sam Richardson, Coleman Domingo, Will Forte, and Jane Fonda. So a pretty cool cast. Let's go ahead and get into the pros of the movie, because I do have a few of those. For one, it is a tight 90 minutes, which is exactly how long an animated or kids movie should be. I'm looking at you, Little Mermaid. There was a point, probably about 45, 50 minutes into the movie, where I did check my watch, so it did slump a little there, but I feel like they did the best they could with the pacing for a movie like this. The voice acting is also pretty solid for the most part. I think Lana Condor, even though she's mostly a newcomer, did a fantastic job as RGB Gillman. Also, Toni Collette, Jane Fonda, I mean, really everyone else was very good in this movie. No real weak links as far as the voice cast is concerned, at least not with the main characters. So props on that. There are also several moments throughout the movie where the audience that I was sitting with burst out in laughter, mostly from more slapstick moments. You know, somebody trips and falls or whatever, and people just bust out laughing at that moment. There wasn't really a lot of the kind of comedy where there's like a clever setup and punchline. Just, you know, that real temporary, in the moment kind of humor. There was also some great music in the movie, not only the score itself, but the soundtrack. They had a number of great needle drops throughout it. It really made the movie feel like a fun, energetic, almost music video style picture. And aside from the fact that the concept is pretty much just ripped off from other movies, it was an interesting enough idea for a movie. But that is kind of where we get into the cons. As I mentioned, it is incredibly formulaic, which isn't always a bad thing. You know, there are only so many stories you can tell, especially in the realm of coming of age stories. So there's only so many options, but they so blatantly rip off other movies that it's jarring, particularly because these movies that they're ripping off just came out in the past couple years. It's pretty atrocious, I'm not gonna lie. Also, as regards the animation and the storytelling, it really gives off some made-for-TV Disney Channel vibes. There were moments in the animation that were pretty good, but then there were others where I felt like I was watching an episode of Bubble Guppies or something. All right, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was not good at certain points. Definitely not what I would expect from the level of a studio like DreamWorks, a legendary studio. And some of the dialogue, especially when you're dealing with the teenagers in and around school, it feels like someone's 45-year-old mom or dad wrote a script and were trying to write what they think that their teenage kids sound like. It was most certainly not lit, my fellow kids? Also, I have to say this because it stood out so much. The exposition in this movie was blatant. If you're not super familiar with the concept of exposition, basically a movie's job is to show and not tell. And so when you have several scenes, which this movie had, where characters are just extolling to you exactly what you need to know in the most clunky way possible, just breaking down, oh, this is why we're here, and this is what happened before, and this is what's going to happen. That is bad writing. Really, and I hate to say it because I want to love every movie I see, but the writing in this was just so trite and predictable. If you've seen any of the trailers at all, you know exactly where this movie is going, almost beat for beat. Also, a little pet peeve, and I'm not sure if I just missed something while I was watching the movie, but at the beginning of the movie, Ruby Gillman is talking about how her family is a family of krakens, pretending to be humans, all this stuff. But then, later on in the movie, she's surprised to find out that she's a kraken. You just told us that you were a kraken. How? What? I'm confused. I don't know. I must have missed something. Either that or they missed something when they were writing the script. Oh, also a fun little aside. The Gillman family has a little pet. I think its name is Nessie, and it looks exactly like one of the monsters from the old animated series, Real Monsters. I don't know if you remember that, but it's hilarious. You can't unsee it. You know, Universal really hasn't been promoting this movie as much as they have some of their other movies, and I think I know why. It's just really not on the level that we would expect from Universal and Dreamworks. And right now, Universal has another movie in theaters, another animated movies in the Super Mario Brothers, which has been killing it and made over $1 billion at this point. So I think they're kind of just throwing out Ruby Gillman to see if they can make a few bucks back and really just trying to hide the fact that it's their movie. That's just kind of my guess. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is a movie that a lot of people are going to enjoy. I think if you're a very young kid, if you have young children, I would say under the age of 10, they might get something out of it. But aside from that, there are so many better options for movies to see in theaters right now with the whole family. In fact, in my short reviewing this movie, I talk about some of the other movies that you should check out in theaters instead. So if you want to see that, I'll link it at the end of the video. Otherwise, if you want to keep up to speed on all the new movies coming out in theaters and at home, make sure you subscribe. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.